Hi, everyone. Welcome to our SPARE program informational session. My name is Amy Hsieh. I'm one of the co-directors of the program. I also am with the Public Service Law Center, so I'm here to answer almost any question you have on public interest, pro bono, or anything like that. But I'm going to pass it over to Professor Raghavan.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Vijay Raghavan. I'm a professor here. And I'm one of the co-directors of the SPARE program. There's three of us, and one of our colleagues, Danielle Tully, who teaches in the Gateway program, is visiting at Irvine this semester, but we'll be back next semester. So what did I want to say? One point I wanted to make is that the SPARE program is one source of summer funding, but it's not the only source of summer funding, and it tends to be pretty competitive. And in evaluating applications, we look at how many times you've applied in the past and whether this is your last chance to get it. And so in addition to sort of everything else that you put in the application. And so, if you do apply in the fall and you don't get it, don't be discouraged. And then the program itself, like one component of it is summer funding, but we also run events during the year. Some of the fellows here have put on events or are putting on events, and maybe they'll talk about that. And there's also a summer workshop that SPARE's run, but that's open to sort of people outside the SPARE community. Anything else? I don't know when that is.
Okay, I'll tell. Okay, so just kind of logistics first is the application is, I don't know if we have printed copies. We may have some printed copies back there with Marva, who I would also like to acknowledge is one of our wonderful coordinator for the SPARE program. So Marva has posted the application online. It is due October 30th, so you have about 3 weeks to get it together. It is a pretty simple application. The questions are pretty straightforward. If you've applied before, I think the thing we're really interested in hearing about is how have you continued to develop your public interest commitment during law school or anything like that. There's a requirement to provide at least one letter of recommendation, and you can, if you're a 1L, you can use the letters of recommendation from your admissions application, and you just have to let Marva know that we need to get a copy of that. But you can also reach out to other new folks to write something for you if that's something that you're interested in. What else did I want to say about applications? Yeah, I think other questions might come from you all organically, so maybe we'll just kick it off with this wonderful panel that we have here. And we are joined also by a SPARE fellow who also did work the prior summer. So thank you, Marina, for joining us. I think we're gonna start, we'll kind of maybe come down this way from Molly, and then I'll play the recording from Miriam as well, so you can hear a little bit about where they spent their summer, how did they find their position, things that they appreciate about the SPARE program, or maybe myths and misconceptions about the SPARE program, if you have any. And then also, I'm just throwing it out there just for sake of efficiency. In the earlier session, we talked about the fellowship program being also a community program. And so one of your obligations would also be to be actively engaged in the pro bono community, public interest community here at the law school. So if any of you would like to speak to how you're doing that, whether it's organizing panels or some other way, it'd be helpful for everyone to hear. So I think I'm gonna hand it to Molly.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello. Okay. I'm Molly Woodencheck. I am a 2L, and over the past summer, I worked at Vermont Law and Graduate School's Center for Agriculture and Food Systems. It was a really awesome experience. It was a university position, so mostly like research focused, working with a small team and getting really in depth on a specific topic. My topic was seed policy in the United States, which was really fascinating. I'm actually taking that into this semester and using that topic to write a note about. So that was really beneficial. Not something I expected. And yeah, I think maybe one of like the misgivings is that if it's public interest work, it has to be public defense or housing court or something like this. But environmental law also counts as public interest work. So you can look in the environmental sector, not defending like DuPont, obviously, but like something, on the people's side. And what else were the questions? Yeah, the SPARE community is great. A lot of my friends at law school come from the SPARE community. And I will be putting on a panel for one of the lunches coming up in November, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to work with a fellow SPARE fellow as well, so it's really nice to like be engaged in the community and feel that we can make each other's lives better. Like I feel like that's the goal of some of these panels, is to introduce students to career paths in the future, and also like things that they can do on campus to like have a more sustainable law school career. I'll pass it on.
Hi, I'm Bella Cicelli. I'm also a 2L. This past summer, my internship with SPARE was at the Death Penalty Information Center. It is in Washington, D.C., but I did it hybrid, or online, I guess, remote. With that, I basically did a lot of legal research, and specifically I worked a lot on the Veterans Rights Project, so talking about the death penalty and mental illness and how there should be certain protections for mentally ill people to not get the death penalty. That was super interesting, and kind of like Molly said, it's not just like working at the DA's office or at a defense firm. Public interest in terms of like SPARE and how SPARE considers that is pretty broad. So you can really get any internship and kind of apply SPARE to that. Something to like be involved in the SPARE community, I think it's really fun, and like Molly said, again, a lot of my friends are in it as well, but I think another cool thing about SPARE is all of the professors that are engaged in it. Not only is there like alumni that come back that you can network with, but also the professors that are at Brooklyn are really awesome that, join the SPARE community and will come to the lunches and the panels and things. And then, what was the last thing? Oh, a misconception. The misconception is just that the public interest, I think, can be pretty broad, and it's not, like Molly said, just a DA office.
Hi everyone, my name is Marina Khan. I'm a 3L. As Amy said, I had my SPARE summer 2 years ago. So my SPARE summer was at the Legal Aid Society in the housing unit in the Bronx. So it was more traditional, like what you think public service is. I don't think that you should feel a lot of pressure to apply to things that you think you want to do, because I think it's equally as valuable to find out what you don't want to do. And I will say from my experience, I realized I'm not a fan of housing, but it did reveal my love for direct service work. A lot of legal aid, if you apply to there, it's a lot of one-on-one client work, intakes. If your supervisor is good, you can be on the record, you go to court a lot. So it's definitely, whatever experience you get will be a good experience, even if it's a bad experience. So I think that should take the pressure off of looking for summer jobs. As well, I will say in terms of the summer jobs, I got my summer job, I think, like in April, and it was because like one of the public service people had sent out an email being like, hey, these people are like doing a resume collect for like Brooklyn Law School. So I'm not going to recommend that you don't apply and look for jobs, but I will say that it's not the end of the world. The public service sector, especially at the school, does not want to see you fail. Please utilize your resources and your network. And that includes alumni groups, affinity groups, SPARE fellows, professors. Please reach out to anyone. Like, all of us are always here for you. In terms of SPARE community, I also ran a lunch thing last year with my friend Mariam, who was on the screen before, but she's not anymore. And I think it's a really good opportunity to like learn how to organize if you haven't been in spaces before. and group building as well. And like my other two panelists have said, I feel like a misconception is that like a lot of public service people are like chained to like being public defenders and like DAs, but like there's so many other things you can do. You just like have to ask around. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jenna. I'm a 2L here. My summer internship was with the Federal Pro Se Legal Assistance Project. We were a small office in EDNY, which is the federal courthouse down the road, and we provided limited scope assistance to pro se litigants. So that means people that are representing themselves in federal court. This was the internship that I wanted starting at like the beginning of 1L last year. I was really interested in like working directly with clients. The subject matter was interesting to me. They see a lot of employment discrimination, which is my background legally. I got the internship through, I think the application was through Simplicity. SDNY has a sister program, and they were part of the PILC Fair, so maybe keep an eye out for that. And Amy helped me with it because my supervisor went to law school with Amy. I really had a great experience. I got to do a lot of really direct client work, which I thought I would like. I did like. It was really, I think it was also really good because I think a lot of client work can be challenging, but this felt extra challenging because we weren't just like, hey, we're going to help you with this thing. Because they were representing themselves, we had to say, you have to do X, X, and X. Like, you should write a letter like this. You should do this. We would sometimes do some drafting, but it was a really good, like, just like human experience. I'm trying to think of what else. There's a lot of ways to be involved with the public interest community here. I think we have a really, really strong one. I think it's great that you're all here at Brooklyn Law School. And the SPARE community is one of my favorites. There's a lot of events that you can go to just across the school, not just SPARE. And you are all very busy people and are here to do good work. So you have a lot of competing interests, and it's hard to pick out the events to go to and like the panels to hear. But I've never regretted going to a SPARE event. And it's kind of one of those rooms where you can walk in and sit down at any table, and you get to talk to cool, interesting people that are really nice. And there's a really broad variety of interests and whatnot. Anything else? Oh yeah, so I am part of the Taxi Worker Defense Collective with Molly. We're working on a case right now, and we represent drivers facing fines from Oath, which is like New York City's. I just actually got a citation from Oath because I wasn't composting. So, it was a warning though, but they do a lot. Anyway, so they run the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and there's a lot of like specific violations that commercial drivers can get. And these fees are like pretty big typically. They're pretty hard to challenge. And it's through an administrative court, not like criminal, or I don't actually know how traffic court works. This is still separate from traffic court. And it's not real court, so students can represent these people. And it's been a really great way to practice, just to get more experience. As for people interested in employment, which I feel like a lot of the 1Ls this year are, it's come up in all of the interviews I've done, because you are helping workers. Like a lot of these people are facing, license bans, so then they couldn't work. There's something else I want. Oh, and also, as somebody that's worked in the employment sphere, I'm always doing plaintiff side stuff. So this is the first time I've actually had real defense experience. Actually, also at the pro se office, that was true, because we do both sides. So that's been very interesting. I feel like this isn't a good highlight reel about the Taxi Worker Defense Collective, but I really enjoy it. Molly is running a training on Wednesday at lunchtime, 1 p.m., right?
Yeah, it's 12:45.
Okay, it's a double lunch, so the second lunch block, right?
6:02.
And I really recommend it. It's one of there's a lot of pro bono projects here. And the taxi worker one is one that you can like take on a case when you have the time to do so. So it's not like a constant commitment. Highly recommend. I think the suspension representation project works like that. There's a couple others. So I really, really recommend getting involved. I imagine a lot of you are 1Ls, maybe not all of you, but your 1L falls super overwhelming and you're really busy and you don't want to get overcommitted, and you see all of us who mostly are overcommitted. And you can talk to us about that again at the end of your 1L when you're committing to your 2L activities, but it's very hard to get overcommitted as a 1L, I feel. All of the clubs that you're joining as 1L delegates, all the pro bono projects, everybody understands what it's like to go through a 1L fall and be worried about finals and what your schedule is. And like we're on similar schedules, but nobody's going to try to make you too busy. So I really recommend you get involved. I'm sure a lot of you already are. Okay, hello. My name is Zoe. I was with the Legal Aid Society in their criminal defense practice in Manhattan. I was assigned to 2 attorneys this summer, both of whom handled a mix of misdemeanor but mostly felony cases, and one of whom was the office's mental health attorney. So a lot of the representation that we were doing was not just in traditional, it was always in criminal court, but not in a traditional criminal court. A lot of times it was in the ATI court, which is alternatives to incarceration, or the arraignment shifts that we would be taking would be hospital arraignments, and so that would be at Bellevue Hospital, which was her sort of station. I really enjoyed my experience. I do want to go back to that office. I spent a lot of time working directly with clients, in court, on the record, in arraignments, and various other proceedings. And I was just really impressed by the attorneys that I worked with and their dedication to public service and to public defense in particular, and really honored to be able to work alongside them. I applied to the Legal Aid Society just through their standard online application portal, because I knew that that was where I wanted to end up. And I think, other ways that I'm involved with the public service community at Brooklyn is I run the Parole Advocacy Project. We are no longer taking applications. We've already assembled our team for this year. However, please apply next year if you are interested. It's a really interesting project. We work with appellate advocates, which is our parent organization, and another public defender provider in New York City. And we work with people who are currently incarcerated but eligible for parole in the coming months to prepare for their parole hearings. So it's a lot of client-facing experience. It's a lot of writing experience. And I think, especially if you're interested in working within the public service and the criminal defense world in New York, it's also a really great way to familiarize yourself with docs and with a lot of the bureaucracy and institutions that one must navigate in order to do this kind of work. Though not always pleasant, a very good skill to have. So that's me and my experience.
Hi everybody, my name is Miriam Salmanova. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a 3rd year student here at the part-time program at Brooklyn Law School, and I'm also a summer legal spare fellow through the program. Over the summer, I was able to work at Peer Defense Project. Peer Defense Project is a youth-led, worker self-directed nonprofit which builds legal tools, education, and networks for youth to use the law for power. And over the summer, I was able to work as a legal fellow supporting legal checkups, risk audits, and trainings that were facilitated by PDP in collaboration with co-counsel. At these trainings, at these sessions, we were able to provide legal information in trainings, legal advice in risk audits, and this opportunity explored how mobilized individuals, community-serving organizations, and parties at various intersections could elevate their legal compliance, data hygiene and security, and immigration concerns in a holistic manner under the changing material and legal landscape. The legal checkups and subsequent consultations were formed in limited scope representation agreements, which vary depending on the services provided. And through the collaboration over the summer, I was able to explore how to co-design and co-facilitate these webinars for the broader legal network, research relevant laws, executive orders, and compliance that was relevant for our clients active in culturally responsive work or queer advocacy, and holding various concerns around immigration impacts, around status, and other compliance levels. And finally, we participated in many discussions around ethics, around professional responsibility regarding potential conflicts, and also I was able to spend so much time learning just about the distinctions between legal information and advice and how to actively support the client selection process. This was also our first experience through building a structured fee model, and that was also really, really interesting to observe. And I was grateful for the experience because at Peer Defense Project, I am actually in the operations role, but for the summer, I was able to strictly focus around the help desk and developing the model around legal advice and support that we could offer youth allies, youth allied orgs, and mobilized young people fighting for justice. So that was my summer, that was my fellowship. I'm really, really excited and honored to be part of the space and sharing this with all of you. So take care, and hi everybody, my name is Mariam Salman.
We'll stop there. But one thing that Mariam didn't talk about is that as kind of part of her way of giving back to the Spare community is that she co-led the Summer Legal Institute. Did any of you get to participate this summer? Okay, I did. And so it's a conversation over the summer that this summer they hosted over 4 Tuesday evenings, and the goal is to connect what we're discussing in law school, like everything from legal theory, to connecting it with what you're experiencing in practice in your summer internships. It's not specifically talking about your specific internship, but they selected different readings in different areas that help to connect big legal theory and issues and philosophy to practice. And so the conversations were really rich with both readings. They would share video clips and music and all different kinds of things. There was always really good food and just a really nice conversation that you could participate in. You can drop in as your schedule allows. So that was something that they organized and are gonna do again next summer. And so they'll probably have a teaser session sometime in the spring if you're interested in participating, whether or not you're part of the Spare community or not. Okay, so I don't know if Professor Raghavan, you want to say anything else about the program, and if not, we can open up the floor to questions. But I do ask that you ask your question into the mic, because you're asking the questions for the benefit of everyone who can't attend today, so they can, hear the answers.
Oh yeah, the only thing I'd add is there is a constraint on the funding, and it's in general we don't support government positions with the exception of public defense. That's just like a historic practice that we've been open to rethinking, but at the moment it's pretty rigid. And part of that goes back to it's called the Spare program. Do you know why? No idea. Edward Sparer. Yeah, it's named after Edward Sparer, and Ed Sparer is a Brooklyn Law grad and was of the generation of public interest lawyers in the 1960s, which was public interest litigation predates the 1960s, but that was when kind of formal legal aid grew out of the lawyers who were doing all this rights-based litigation. And a lot of what they did, and a lot of what Ed Sparer pioneered, is lawsuits against government, against the federal government, against state governments. And so now that we're carrying on that legacy, we have this constraint that we don't send people to go work for the government. But I think that anyways, that's it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I'm sure Amy has told you this, but you can stack your Spare funding with other sources of funding from outside the school. So that's not BLISB, that's not the financial aid summer money, but a bunch of us got Equal Justice America money. I got a $1,200 grant, so nothing crazy, but there is money out there. So, and there are some of those other places do fund government work, so
Yeah, so I can just add from the noontime conversations, the timing of the selection process is such that you will know whether or not you have the Spare funding or not. If you are not selected for Spare, BLISB is a student-run fellowship program that opens up its applications in the beginning of the spring semester. And then after that, the Public Service Law Center will also post a bunch of different kinds of specific funding for different areas, such as like workers' rights, public defense, disability rights, LGBTQ rights advocacy. So those are just a few. And then after that, if you don't secure any of those things, still fine, because the public service grant is available for people who are eligible for federal work study. And we anticipate that that program will also run again this summer. But also on the public service page on BLS Connect, you'll find a bunch of resources on how to fund your public interest summer. So if you're just wanting to better understand what all of those different things are, there's a document on there that points to all of those different things. Another question that came up earlier was if the funding varied between different kinds of placements, and no. And I'm sorry to break the news to the folks at this table, but we were able to raise the funding for next summer to $6,500. So thank you for your service. But at the same time, I hope that you all, the cost of living and everything else is really increasing, and we're trying to keep a pace with that. So that is what it is. Questions? Hopefully none from you guys.
All right, so just kind of question. I was only ever worked in government, so I'm kind of limited on my knowledge. How did you guys find your places to go? How did you like kind of narrow that down? And what is that application? I know Zoe, you said you just applied, or sorry, you said you just applied to the open. Like, how does that process go? How did you guys kind of narrow it down? And then like, yeah, pretty much start from there.
So the way, at least for public defense, for those of you who are interested in public defense in particular, because New York City does not have, or not just New York City, New York State, doesn't have a public defender's office the way that a lot of other states do. It's not a government office. They have a network of nonprofits. And so within New York City, there are a lot of different organizations that provide public defense. So there's like Brooklyn Defender Services, Bronx Defenders, Neighborhood Defender Services, and Legal Aid, and various others. That's not all of them. So knowing that, I probably applied to like all of them, and they all have a varying methods through which you can apply, whether it's directly on their website or you email somebody or whatever it is. So that's just for public defense. Look into the organizations in particular that you would be interested in working for, and they all provide, they might have different philosophies or different approaches that they take to client work, but they're all providing the same service to people, and then determining from there how they want to take your application. So that's for public defense is sort of how I went about that. And same thing when you're applying for post-grad jobs. A lot of it, there's other ways to do it, but that's sort of a similar process.
I can clarify because I used some terms that you might not know. So I found my summer internship through Simplicity, which is like the school's job board posting board. I don't know if they let you into it yet. I thought there was maybe like a deadline you couldn't you can go, okay, so you can look into it. I think it's kind of fun to look at job listings if you don't let yourself get stressed out about it. It's fun to see I'm worried about my contracts class right now, but I'm working toward, it's good to remind yourself what you're working towards. So I recommend scrolling through things. There's also the PILC Fair, which is a public interest Zoom fair that happens in February with a ton of jobs. I think a lot of spare interns get hired through that fair in the spring. I also recommend psjd.com. You have to make an account, but they post public interest jobs. I just went through them the other week and felt a lot better about my 2L options. So those are a couple things. I keep a notes app spreadsheet, something like that. And every time I think about, I hear somebody talk about a job they had that I'd be interested in, I write it down and try to check on how you get into those places and just keep a running list. But there's a ton of really interesting things out there. So, Anybody else?
I found my job through an upperclassman, a 3L, I guess that's what you would call them. And someone was just talking about environmental law, and I was like, oh, what was the job you did? And then she was like, I'll send you the application or something like this. And then I applied actually by January 6th, and I got it by like January 20th. So it was like really nice to actually have a job before the PILC fair. But I still did participate in the PILC fair just because I was weighing my options, but you're not really supposed to do that actually. So if you take a job, don't participate in the PILC fair because, there's a lot of candidates there. But yeah, that is all to say that they're like, use your resources, your friends at other law schools, maybe have done something that you're interested in previously. Maybe they can, kind of tell you what their path was, or like professors or just, other students here. I'm happy to share my internship with people when the posting goes live. So really just ask around as well. It's good to like kind of broaden the search area beyond just like the PILC fair. But the PILC fair is also really awesome.
Something else, once you finish your spare summer, we give the public interest law center like a synopsis of what we did. And I'm not sure if that's available. Yeah. So you can see like our testimonials basically on things that spare fellows did and other various people who submit these like descriptions, what they did, and see out of that list kind of what your options are. And then those are good for spare funding because a lot of spare people did them.
Yeah, so everybody shared such great resources. I wanted to just let you know where you can find some of them. So on the BLS Connect public service page, finding jobs and opportunities, there are actually different lists based on like your practice area that you're interested in, or like different kinds of client populations. So lists of organizations that you might want to spend time looking into. But aside from that, as Bella mentioned, there's an employer evaluations tab, and once you click on it, you'll see like the entire list of organizations that people have worked at, and all of them were required to submit an evaluation. And if you can be so kind to do the same when you're done, then we can keep the information, in our school community. But they also mentioned the PILC fair. We will have a lot of info sessions about how to make the best use of that, including a workshop, like how to prepare your application materials, how to use the fair, how to use the website. All of these will be unpacked ad nauseum. And so we'll also have a mock interview program in January. I don't know what else, but, oh, yes.
Just one thing about putting together materials. I think my biggest piece of advice when putting together materials when you are applying for public service positions is to use the public service center as a sort of career guiding resource. I think that the way that you write a cover letter specifically for a public service or a public interest organization is very different from the way that you would write a cover letter for a larger firm, or I'm not familiar with pretty much any other area of practice that's not criminal law, so who knows? But I think it was incredibly helpful to have someone, I think it was actually Amy, to read and go over my cover letter with me and help put together an application that was going to be narrowly tailored for the specific kinds of organizations and services that those organizations were providing. And that is just advice that I was not able to get, or help I was not able to get outside of the public service community. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is go to them for resume, cover letter, application material, and all of the other things that come along with applying.
I accidentally did a mock interview with the Career Service Center, not the Public Interest Center, and everybody was nice, but they paired me with a management side employment attorney, and his first question to me was why would you want to switch sides? And I was like, I got nothing. So he was nice, but it wasn't helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that definitely use the public service center if you're public service oriented as your career center. I will will say the nicest thing I have to say about the Career Center is that they don't really tailor to public service people. So Amy is literally my career advisor right now. So I will say that. And I also will say in terms of jobs, please rely on your networks. I know I said that before, but I think that's so, so important. And people don't really say that. Like people in law school are very like focused on grades, which are also important. But I know people who have gotten jobs that they would not have gotten without their network, even when their grades were bad. So please talk to people. Please like look out for emails from Amy. They do resume collects like all the time. So like please shoot out like your resume anywhere.
Just on that note, one more thing. We mentioned BLISB, which is Brooklyn Law Students for the Public Interest. I'm actually the alumni chair of that. Jenna's also on the e-board of that. And we're doing an alumni dinner this semester. So a lot of alumni are coming back who are all in public interest fields. I'm organizing it. You guys should all come. It'll be fun to network and have dinner.
One thing career-wise is last year at the alumni dinner, our speaker was general counsel of a nonprofit, and I had never thought about that as like a public interest legal career, but like, I mean, you know, pretty cool. And you probably don't have to work with lawyers all day long.
Hello, I'm Andrea. I came in late, so sorry if this question was already answered, but for the Sparrow Fellowship, if there is like a net new opportunity that we're hoping to work on, what's that process look like? Like if specifically right now I'm looking into like Medicare, Medicaid with AI, and I'm working with NILAG and some other nonprofits.
We were sharing earlier that Sparer generally can be used to fund working with a nonprofit organization, and then very limited exception is like public defenders based in government agencies. So if you're working with NILAG, we frequently have students doing their Sparer summer at NILAG, so that's totally fine. And also, even if it's a new organization that we don't know about, I personally did not know about the Vermont Seed Law Group, but you know, there's not much standing in the way of you doing the work. I will say I was a sparer myself, and my sparer summer I did more policy advocacy, honestly, but it was still with an organization that I had legal supervision for, and so it is a little different from other requirements at the law school. For example, externships, you kind of need like certain kinds of supervision and whatever, but broadly speaking, I think as long as it's legal, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I have one thing? Yeah, actually, I also have one thing. Sorry. And then someone asked in the earlier session, if you get the Sparer Fellowship, but then you end up locking in like a judicial internship or something that we wouldn't fund, some fellows in the past have then chosen to decline the funding but still stay in the Sparer community. We would prefer that not to be the case, but if that ends up being you, like, you know, we still welcome you.
That was my question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Can they use that funding another summer, or do they lose it?
I think we'll lose, but yes, I think we'd have to think about it, but I think it's probably a this summer thing because that'll just prevent us from allocating space to someone else. So
If it was a more like tech heavy, but like a legal tech project, I guess what is the criteria there?
The main criteria that you're working with a nonprofit organization,
Yeah.
I think, and someone trying to support like the public interest side of things.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any final questions from the group? Think of every possible question you have. Okay. Oh, can you turn maybe? Keep going.
I'm Kevin. If I'm kind of interested in both government and nonprofit work, but it sounds like to apply for this, you should be pretty locked into using the funding. Is that the right way to go about this?
Yeah, I would say that if you're interested in working for a government agency this summer, and that's kind of your primary goal, this is not the fellowship for you. However, there are, like, BLISB can be used for that. There are other Public Service Law Center fellowships that you can apply to, so it is not, the end of the world. If you, this is primarily, as Professor Raghavan shared, because of the origins of the Sparrow Fellowship, it is meant to support sort of like the people side of the legal issue. So I think that's the way to think about it. Thanks. Yes, but if you were at the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender, which is a government placement, that's kind of like the main exception.
Quick plug for the New Jersey Office of Public Defenders. I worked there my 1L summer in their law guardian unit representing kids in family court. New Jersey has a really, excuse my language, kick-ass Office of the Public Defender, just to put that out there.
Yeah. Yes.
Following up on that, in New York, because there's not like government public defenders, is like any organization that provides that type of work qualifier?
Yeah.
And for example, like legal aid does not just criminal defense. They also do housing justice. They do family court. They do juvenile court. They do they provide a lot of services.
Hello. Would you be able to speak a little bit about how applications are evaluated and what might separate a good application from an average one?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there's a hard science to it. I mean, we certainly, what do we look at? We look to see like your experience in public interest. We look to see your reasons for applying for the fellowship. We look to see what the references or recommendations, letters that you submit say. Yeah, I mean, and then we look to see if you've applied before, if this is the last time you're going to apply. I mean, there's not like a hard science to it, and I think that what separates a good application from a bad application, I think it's hard to say, but I do think that applications that we get from people who seem like they have a very loose grasp on what public interest is don't do well. So for example, and applications that seem to strongly hint that they would like to use the money for something that we won't support also don't do well. So I think, so if, we get those, we get applications that are like, I want to work at a DA's office, and we're not going to interview that person, or or some application where it's like, I want to go work at a law firm, doing XYZ. But outside of that, I think that like as long as it seems consistent with the things that we support and the person seems sincere, yeah, I mean, then that's, and usually what we'll do, I don't know how many applications we'll get, but so for the entering class, we fund, we take in like 8 to 9 people. So we get incoming 1Ls will apply in the spring. And then here this time we'll take, I don't know, more, 13. 10 to 12. I think we take more than that. We'll see, but it'll be more. And so we interview more people, and then so it's going to be dependent on how you do in the interview. So yeah, I wish there was like a clearer science to it, but I would just say, make sure, I mean, if you're applying, now you know what it's about. Tailor your application to that.
I would also add, I think if you can articulate what's your commitment and interest in it, if you actually see yourself having a career in public interest, that is kind of the goal, is to make sure that people can stay engaged in this work throughout law school. And like we said, this is not the only funding opportunity. So like, what makes it, why would you want this source of funding as opposed to something else? And I'm just gonna hint at the wonderful community here and the things that you get to do. But you don't have that many words to say all of those things, so you have to be really judicious about what is most important to you, and then we will kind of move from there. Okay.
one other thing I would say is, as part of the commitment of being a Spare Fellow is you get the money, but in exchange, and I know it's not that much money, but in exchange, we do want you to be involved. And so that means trying to put an event on, attending the events, and now that this summer program has new life in it, possibly getting involved in that. So that's something that I think we do screen for as well. To what extent are you gonna be kind of a passive participant? To what extent you'll be more active? Yeah, so, again, there's no science. We definitely have people who have been, we've given Sparrow Fellowships before, and they end up at big firms, and that's just the nature of it, so.
Okay. Any final questions? No? Okay, so just a reminder, the application is due on October 30th, which is roughly 3 weeks from now. If you have questions about the application or anything else that we didn't address here, you can always email public service at Brooklaw. You can find the application both in the back and also online on the brooklaw.edu website. Yeah, and I just say thank you to the folks that came and shared their wisdom. So thanks, friends.